loud. I think we're good. Okay. Well, everyone, welcome. This is the Agile Austin coaching group, and we normally meet at UShip in Austin, Texas, but with COVID, Brittany and I now host this meetup virtually. So with that being said, we meet the first Monday of every month, and we meet about 6:15 for just a soft opening so we can, chat and network and the like. And after that, we get started right away. Normally, we would feed you all dinner and pizza, but the charges to get everybody pizza this distance, this many, got a little bit exorbitant. So we are, our mission of Agile Austin is to promote Agile software development through the exchange of ideas and practices while providing opportunities for professional growth. We have a platinum sponsor who is Agile Velocity here in Austin, Texas. We also have several other gold, silver, and bronze sponsors, and we are grateful for each and every one of them. So in Austin, Texas, we are very lucky to have so many different Agile groups. So you can have, excuse me, I have a big frog in my throat. You can have SIGs on leaders, Agile leaders, Kanban, Agile at scale, DevOps, QA, still with the frog. Coaching, which is the one we have tonight, architecture, Scrum Master, and the like. So if you go to the Agile Austin website, you can always find when the next SIG is meeting and who is the leader for that, and we're happy to reach out and help you in any way we can. So for this SIG, our basics, we really want to help you as practitioners to dive deeply into Agile coaching, and that's what we want here with guest speakers, panel discussions, or interactive opportunities to learn something new about Agile coaching. Like I said, the first Monday of every month, 6:30 p.m. And we'll be on Zoom at least for the rest of the year, and we'll have to figure out what to do going beyond that. My name is Erin. I'm an Agile coach, coactive coach. You can find me at admelioracoaching.com. And Brittany, who is the other host of this space, she is at UShip. She is an Agile coach, Scrum Master, and music and dog lover there as well. So tonight, we will be having Kincade Park, but I did want to give you a quick preview of what we have coming up in September and beyond. September 7th will be Rob Brodell will be coming to talk about product management, Agile coaching, and the blind spot. We also have Nonprofit Agility, Tales from Mother Earth in October, and Bacablo, Graphic Facilitation for Coaches coming in November. But tonight is actually, I've been really looking forward to tonight's talk. Kincade Park, he has been, frankly, both a friend as well as a coach and a mentor. He's going to be talking about candor, compassion, and teams. And one reason I love Kincade is because he does not just talk this, he actually lives and breathes what he talks, and he makes an effort to go out of his way to practice what he talks about. I consider him not only a good friend, but someone that I really care about deeply. So I've known Kincade for what, about 3 or 4 years now? And I guess I admire him more each year. So with that, Kincade, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to let you take sharing over, okay?
Okay.
All right.
All right. Everyone see my screen?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, first of all, Erin, thank you for that awesome intro. You can get me all choked up before I even start here. But yeah, thank you all for coming out tonight. I did actually want to, pause for a minute and thank both Erin and Brittany for the help with facilitation, for keeping this coaching SIG going, even throughout the pandemic, when we've all had to figure out new ways to work. And also for both of you have supplied me a lot of radical candor throughout the years. So yeah. So I'm Kincade Park. I've been an engineering leader, a product leader, an agile coach. When I started my career, managed a team of support. So I've kind of seen product development from a lot of different perspectives, a lot of different cross-functional teams. But I think there's, regardless of your role, regardless of the department you're in, The book Radical Candor, which I'm going to be talking about a lot tonight, is really, I think as leaders, we build a toolkit. There's no like, I mean, you have to be careful of Maslow's, Maslow's hammer. If you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So ideally, you have a kit that you pull from. I'm not necessarily positing that you should take Radical Candor and apply it everywhere as much as add this to your toolkit, because I think it's one of the most useful ones that I've found. With that, I'll get into it a little bit. And I apologize, this is the first presentation I've given via Zoom, so I'll do my best here and encourage the feedback at the end so that I'm walking the walk. So at this point, so Radical Candor came out in 2017. It was actually revised last year based on some radically candid feedback that the author Kim Scott got. It's one of those books that I feel like if you've been in, product development or leadership or coaching, you've probably either read this book or heard of it. So I'm sure there's some people who've read it, some people who've heard of it. Maybe there's a few who haven't. So in some sense today, none of these ideas are mine. I'll maybe share how I've applied them. But, and so this is a bit of a book report, but I do hope you take a little bit more than that. I think this is one of those books that it gets talked about a lot. And what I've seen is when a book kind of enters our collective conscious, it can become this telephone game of sorts where people have heard enough about a book that they feel like they've maybe read it. And so maybe they don't. This book in particular I've heard it misinterpreted, misconstrued. And so in addition to learning a bit about the book, I hope that you'll walk away with maybe some of those perceptions that you might have on the surface debunked. Because there is a lot of nuance to this, but it covers one of the hardest things to do as a coach or leader, which is giving candid feedback, particularly the tough variety. And then I'll share some tips on how you can practically put this into use in your day-to-day life. I do want to give the caveat that I'm taking a broad definition of coaching. So one misconception about the book comes from its subtitle, be a kick-ass boss without losing your humanity. I think that whether you're a manager or an agile coach, like managers have to coach, coaching is just something that we're all interested in. And so I'm not necessarily hopefully this applies regardless of your function. Beyond that, I actually use this in my personal life. And so maybe you'll find ways to do that as well. One of the things that if I polled the room right now, I bet that if we asked people, what are the characteristics of a high performing team, you'd get a lot of the same answers. I chose Patrick Lencioni's here to kind of draw a parallel to Radical Candor. I really like his characteristics. He actually presents these as kind of a pyramid, which I sort of have this flipped, but at the base of that pyramid is trust. So with transparency and honesty, you can build trust. And if you have a foundation of trust, unfiltered debate, proliferation of ideas and opinions can happen. And if you have a safe place for conflict, and people feel like they've been heard, they've debated things openly, that leads to more commitment to the decisions that are made by a team. And when everyone's committed, they hold themselves accountable, they hold each other accountable. And with all four of those in place, you get results. I think it's important also, another one that I think is really, really important to any team and certainly to any coach or manager is psychological safety. But at the end of the day, it's kind of another way of saying trust in some ways. So one of the common things though, whether you're an agile coach or you're a manager who's doing coaching or, just a mentor of some sort, we all are in these roles, to provide, probably because we're interested in providing guidance. And so, guidance as it relates to coaching and managing is, it's setting a clear direction. But I really like how Kim Scott, the author, also takes that a step further in terms of, at its most basic, it's also providing praise and criticism. Her definitions of praise in particular, really resonated with me. Praise, sure. Hopefully a byproduct of it is it makes people feel good. That's a good thing. But ultimately what you're looking for is it demonstrates to people what success looks like, what the team or organization values, so that's important. And criticism, when done thoughtfully and compassionately, is helping someone by pointing out when there's room for improvement. Sometimes it may be pointing out room for improvement even when you're praising a success, as long as you aren't undermining the praise as well. So, why is it, this is a book about radical candor. It's pretty, at its basic, it's pretty easy to know kind of what the book is about. But if we can all agree that giving feedback, particularly the tough variety, is hard, that's what this book's about. That's what I want to talk about today. But I want to get you guys talking about it. So we're going to first go to, for about 5 minutes, some breakout rooms to get everybody kind of talking on this subject. I really just want you to answer this question. What is it? Why is giving feedback so hard? It's maybe why is it hard to praise? But, it's definitely why is it hard to give that tough feedback? And we'll have facilitators in each room, and we'll come back in a few minutes, and we'll just kind of have a couple of the groups give their debrief. Okay, Erin, you can.
Oh, you're muted.
I'm going to send you to breakout rooms now, and you'll have facilitators in each one, like Kincade said. So take 5 minutes.
Do I need to stop sharing?
No, keep sharing. I think you're good. Most people have gone to breakout rooms. There are a couple that I think were just on mute, so they're still in the main room here. But yeah, you're doing good, Kincade. You are. We'll give them about 5 minutes there.
Sure.
Who's the one that's not assigned?
Looks like we got about half.
Hold on, I've got to go.
Cool.
Zoom production of calls is something that we never thought would be a skill. And it turns out it now is.
Yes, it is. I
have a friend who works at McKinsey, and for some of their calls, they do have Zoom producers. Mm-hmm. And once you've learned to have one, you're like, oh, yeah.
One of the things I intended to do, and I wish I'd done it before this, was there's just a few LinkedIn Learning seminars on facilitating remote meetings, specifically with Zoom. Yeah, it is hard.
I've gotten better and better at it, just because I kind of had to, but it also, on Wednesday nights, I have a friend who's been honestly one of my hugest supporters, but she leads, it's kind of an online meetup for photographers. And so I said, I'll come facilitate that. And so I, getting a lot of people that are not used to Zoom or anything like that up into rooms, and it's going really well, but just learning to host something. But I tell you what, those soft openings, like you're starting to see, we've been doing that over in the coaching circles, and those go really well, because when people feel welcomed and not like they're just a number, the feedback we get is just, people are like, oh, I matter here. I'm like, yeah, you do.
I feel like I've seen, since the pandemic started, it ever went remote. A lot of just improvement across the board, and just
Well, we have to.
the use of these tools.
I've moved a lot of my stuff over to Mural, and this Friday I was supposed to be teaching a coaching day workshop for Lagos, Nigeria, but we had to move it to September. But when you think about it, the fact that I could, from rural Montana, be leading a workshop in Nigeria, you're like, this is Star Trek. It's Max Headroom, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
You know, and it's like, wow.
Really, really neat. Yeah, in some ways it's allowed for some connections that you wouldn't have made otherwise.
Or skills that you would not have made yourself lean into and learn and really start to master because you kind of had to. By the way, another skill I had to begin to master was network engineering. I came up here and my dad, before I got up here, he's like, we got to do something about the Wi-Fi. And I'm like, oh, that's right. I did put that equipment in, and that was 7 years ago. But I'm like, fixing my dad's Wi-Fi up here. I mean, this is middle of nowhere, Kincade.
Yeah.
So I got a hold of a friend of mine who is a network engineer. He has a PhD, no less, in this stuff. I'm like, okay, Bill, here's the challenge. So Bill made me come over. He made me learn how to put Ethernet ends, or, you know, put ends on cable. Made me learn how to do that. Sent me up here with 2 boxes of cable, Cat 6 and Cat 5.
He was not playing.
No, I came up here. I learned how to test it. My dad and I had to drill a hole in the side of the house to run it through so I could run it through the ceiling down here. I spent one day, because we had to put an antenna up to go get that Great Pyrenees dog, that giant Great Pyrenees. So we could have an antenna for him. And, oh, he's going to want to come, is it? Okay. Hold on, I've got to let some people in. We're just going to leave him in here.
Sure.
I'll tell you the rest of the story later.
Cool.
All right. I'm going to start bringing him back here in 1 minute. Yeah, yesterday I was putting Ethernet. It involves much liquor at the end of the day. Mom, all day long, all she heard was me just going up and down stairs to like go down in the basement to test, go back upstairs to go. So, I got 3 ports put in though. And for somebody with, you know, medieval literature in her background, that's pretty impressive.
It is. It is. We'll use that. That's definitely one of the, networking is one of the few tech skills that hasn't atrophied on my side. It's always useful. I had a scare because my Google Fiber was being really flaky the last few days. I was just sure that.
Don't say Google Fiber. I'm on 2G.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I had no problem until 2 days.
I'm going to close these rooms. You ready?
Yep.
Oh, apparently they're closing in 60 seconds now.
Okay.
But they're going to be coming back.
Cool.
Apparently my Zoom production skills aren't quite as good as I was flaunting.
Seems like the time was right though, at least.
Yep. Okay, people are coming back in though. Okay, good.
We made it back.
Oh, good. Honestly, Brittany, my big fear is that I just accidentally hang up on everyone, which is why I always give like 2 to 3 co-hosts per meeting. Because I'm like, in case I screw up, we've got a backup. Yeah. Not that I've ever done that, because I totally have. All right, so more and more looks like, yep, 3 and 4 and 5 are, oh, they'll be coming back whether they want to or not in 6 seconds.
All right.
Okay. All right, everybody, welcome back. And Kincade, I'll turn it back over to you.
Yeah, so I'll take, volunteers here. If anyone from any of the teams wants to share, maybe like 2 or 3 of the reasons you came up with.
Yeah, this is Neil from, I believe it was Group 4, Breakout Group 4. Some of the reasons were, I'll give you probably more than 4 here, but One is it's just really hard, right? You don't want to demotivate your team, and you feel like giving this kind of feedback that is on the critical side, the difficult side, demotivates people. And how do you not do that? But another one was, though, in order to help overcome that is you build trust. If the people trust you and they know you're not criticizing, you're just truly saying, hey, you could probably do better in these areas, and they trust you, that's important. And you talked about that earlier, all right?
Yeah.
But another piece was, and this is a really tough one. Okay, so you're a female in the workforce, and the person just doesn't listen to what you have to say because, well, you're a lady. Well, my goodness, how do you overcome that? You can't overcome your gender in that regard. So that's a tough one. That is a real tough one.
Right.
Another one is the person. How do you give somebody, or you give somebody feedback, and they just can't rise to the level of performance that you need?
Right.
Right. And then another one was, especially with Agile, you're going so quickly, sometimes you just don't have time. You don't have time to give that critical feedback that they need because you're already on the next piece of it. You're already rolling on to the next phase. So time is difficult. You just don't have time. So those were the things that people struggle with based on the feedback that we got.
Right. Does anyone else have any other things they came up with, maybe a little different from that?
Well, I was in, I think it was Brewcat room 2 or 3, I'm not sure, anyway. The two main ones that we all kind of came to consensus on were fear of hurting people's feelings, and then fear of what their reaction might be, especially if they're not willing to accept the feedback, and it creates a very negative interaction.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I'm having a little trouble here. Yeah. I mean, that's a lot of what I've come up with, in my own coaching and talking to other leaders. I think you guys covered a lot of it. It's a fear of the reaction. We know that tough feedback hurts. I mean, hopefully everyone here has at some point had a coach or manager who's been willing to do that for you. But if you have, then it does hurt at first, even if it makes you better in the long run. Another one I'd add is just I think a lot of leaders really don't model the behavior. I think we're all probably pretty lucky if you've had, one, maybe two bosses in your career that really were willing to do that. Because it's uncomfortable to give, as we're talking about. So, and then I think sometimes it's just easy, it's just inertia. We believe, or maybe we hope that the person is aware of these things and they'll fix it over time. So yeah, that's really, a lot of what the book is about. The general idea is that as hard as it is, the compassionate thing to do is to give the feedback, because in the absence of that, people have no opportunity to improve it if they, if they're not aware of it, or no one's ever shown them, no one ever guided them on that. So that leads us kind of into the Radical Candor framework. The framework itself is really, really simple. It's just a quadrant with 2 dimensions, but I think, it's deceptively simple. And so, we'll get into some practical tips later. But I think the framework's really useful for kind of spotting where you are and where others might be on in your journey towards radical candor. But I'll add, I think and I'll share a story here in a little while of radical candor is not this place that you arrive at like nirvana where you can't slip backwards. It's a kind of fleeting state of being. I have had cases where I've been able to do it with one person, and with the same person the next day, I find myself, in a different quadrant. So I hope that one of the takeaways here, and I'll take my own failure bow at the end of a very recent example. You just have to work at this and practice it a lot. and I went the wrong direction. So this is the framework right here. If you have two dimensions, you know, on the vertical axis, there's caring personally and not caring or not giving a shit. On the other axis, you have silence and challenging directly. And so the basics is, as you know, a coach or a manager, ideally you both care personally and challenge directly, or give feedback directly. It is important. Radical candor is about praise as much as it's about challenging directly. The book spends a little more time on challenging because that's harder. But anyway, we'll get into that a little bit too, because that's kind of one of the misconceptions. But starting kind of down in the lower right quadrant, I think this is maybe the misconception I see the most when I hear people talking about Radical Candor, the book, as at kind of a surface level, is it's brutal honesty, this license to be a jerk. Just, you know, well, I'm just being honest. You know, so obnoxious aggression is when you're willing to challenge, but you're not presenting in a way that communicates that you care, or that you care about the outcome of the feedback that you're giving. That is not what Radical Candor is about. And while it might get some short-term results, in the long run, it's going to burn people out. And, you know, it's going to shut people down too, where they're not really listening to anything you said because of the way you presented it. The quadrant you definitely don't want to be in is manipulative insincerity. That's where you neither care nor do you give honest feedback. You just kind of say whatever is convenient to further your own goals. Often that's, you know, telling people what they want to hear, but not always. It could be, you know, it could be giving feedback just to be me. It's just you don't care, and none of your feedback is really, really honest. Fortunately, I haven't known very many people that those people generally don't survive very long on a team or as leaders, but you know, it exists. I've ran into them. Ruinous empathy is really the one. I think this is maybe why a lot of us haven't had this behavior modeled for us. Most managers really probably live in ruinous empathy. I know I have certainly spent some time in ruinous empathy myself. That's where, you know, you really do care about the person, but you don't care enough to do the hard work of challenging them and giving them, you know, both the praise and occasionally the tough feedback that they might need to hear. It seems like the nice thing to do. It's really kind of putting your own needs in front of the other person, though, and just kind of avoiding that discomfort, because no one can do anything with I mean, it's nice to have people to care about, but I think we all want to improve at what we do on a daily basis. We can't do that if no one around us, whether it's peers or coach or manager, is willing to go out on that limb and do it. And so, you know, obviously Radical Candor, top right's where you want to be. And that's, you know, that's being willing, it's caring enough to give the praise in a way that's humble, give the challenges and feedback also in a way that's humble. So I think that it's also, the authors chose candor for a very specific reason versus, say, honesty or truth. You know, candor is the state or quality of being frank, open, and sincere. It does not mention anything about truth. And, you know, without getting too philosophical here, one person's truth is sometimes another person's hoax. You know, as a coach or manager, for you to approach feedback as if you have some vision of the truth and then, you know, just impose it upon people, that's another good way to shut people down. And so, you know, humility is a big part of Radical Candor. So, you know, it's caring enough to provide that feedback in a way that's humble and kind, with both your praise and your criticism. And so just going a little bit into where some of the misconceptions come out of, the two dimensions, you know, caring personally, at its most basic, it is human decency. That does not require that you have a deep, you know, years-long personal relationship with everyone on your team, whether they're peers or direct reports or just people you coach. In fact, that really doesn't scale. The reality is probably most people who are on your team, you're just not going to get that close with over time if you look at the body of your career. So, but I would hope that whether you have a deep personal relationship with someone or they're a stranger, you wouldn't just let another human drive off a cliff if you had a chance to stop it. So, and again, as I stated before, it's just this is hard work. So it's being thoughtful and putting others' needs before your own, meaning you care about that person improving enough to be willing to face the discomfort that does come with providing, particularly the tough feedback. One of the things that I think gets glossed over and a misconception about radical candor too, this book does spend a lot of time on the importance of praise. So, and not just, we all know it's important and that we should do that in equal measure, but there are ways of being radically candid with your praise, just like there are ways of being radically candid with your criticism. And we'll get into that a little bit in practical tips. It's not getting too personal with someone who may want privacy. As an example, if you had someone on your team that maybe had a chronic illness, this is actually something that I've dealt with in one of my teams in the past. Understandably, we may rush to like the empathic thing is to ask questions and show them we're there, and in many cases that's true. But if you are diagnosed with something awful like cancer, or maybe you're even terminal, work may be the only place that you don't have to talk about that. And so it's really important that you're cognizant of just how personal that person is comfortable with you being. The same is true of oversharing details about yourself. I mean, I will certainly there's a place for vulnerability and, giving a little bit sometimes to like share something about yourself so that you hope that someone will do the same for you. But that makes some people really, really uncomfortable. And so it's not necessarily oversharing because you also run the risk of, well, this guy really just wants to talk about himself all the time. And every time I bring up something of mine, it turns it, to a conversation about himself. So you really need to kind of get an idea of where what people's comfort level are with that. And a bit repetitive at this point, but caring personally is not avoiding those tough conversations. Challenging directly is giving someone that, the kind of heads up that underlies human decency in a humble way that communicates that this is your opinion. It's not the ultimate truth. You may even be wrong, and you're open to the idea that you may be wrong. And when it's delivered humbly and kindly, challenging directly can be the compassionate thing to do, which is sort of counterintuitive. And it's probably where a lot of us struggle. I apologize if you guys can hear my kiddos in the background. Challenging directly, again, doesn't mean you're right all the time, doesn't mean you have the truth, and it's not a license to be a jerk. Just say the first thing that comes to mind. So I'm going to get into some practical tips, some from the book, some just, from my own observations. But these are some of these cover more kind of the caring personally dimension. Some of them cover the challenging directly, and many of them probably, really apply to both. So it starts with, back to trust. Get to know someone before you just jump right to radical candor. That's one-on-ones. And I know that may sound like a manager-only type of situation. I know a lot of coaches that do one-on-ones. And so, that could be lunch, it could be a formal one-on-one. These days, it might be like a virtual walk or virtual one-on-one. But, it's an opportunity to get to know somebody outside of the context of the team. You also should do the same, with the team in general, getting to know them. I think you should, spending time with both the team collectively and getting to know what kind of the motivators for each person are. It's helpful because anyone who's, been a coach very long, you'll quickly realize that just one technique that you try to apply to human beings, it's just not going to work. People just respond to different things. They have different, experience levels. They have different experiences in their life, and that means you need to kind of meet them where they are, and move at a pace that's really comfortable for them. With someone who's maybe, if you're at a place where radical candor is kind of already there, and now you're their new coach, maybe you can move a little faster than like you could with a place where where everyone's very polite, or with someone, you need to be conscious of things like a person's experiences. If someone had like a terrible boss or like someone just toxic on their team, you may not want to jump right to radical candor. So it's just, understanding people before you jump there. And a lot of that is listening, really, really listening, not just kind of waiting, letting someone talk while you're thinking about what you're going to say. It's easy to do that even unintentionally. As a coach, we all want to go into solution mode sometimes, but so that's both, listening quietly, which actually can be kind of uncomfortable for people if you just kind of let them talk and let long pauses happen. But what you may get from quiet listening versus more active listening sometimes is less tendency for people to just want to agree with what you're saying. But there's a time and place also for maybe active listening, which is more, throw an idea in the room and then encourage open, honest debate. That's just kind of, I think, a little further when you're, further along on the team getting towards radical candor, that kind of thing might work as a coach or leader. One good technique that applies is letting the other person drive the agenda. If you come with your agenda every time, you're probably going to end up doing a lot more talking than listening. And so this may not work off the bat, but using questions like, how would you like to spend our time today? Or what's important for you to discuss today may sort of open that up. Be patient. It may not happen in the first one. It may not happen in the first three, but if you let them drive it, I think a lot of times you'll uncover some interesting things and really get to know someone better.
Oh, real quick, Kincade. Looks like we had a comment come in.
Sure.
Active listening or just listening is hard with so many distractions. Turn off phones and laptops when giving and receiving feedback. Definitely.
Yeah, that's really good point. And I think asking others to, that's actually a good thing to kind of instill with the team in general. We all get, nose deep in our devices. Oh, great comment. I'd probably add to that too, maybe, empathic listening is a really good way too, which is like someone says something to you and you paraphrase it back to them. It communicates to them that they were heard. You want to just be careful that you're not literally saying the exact same thing. Rephrasing is helpful. So it also helps it, get codified in your own head. No, great comment. When you're moving towards, the more challenging, trying to get to challenging directly, whether you're a coach, and particularly if you're a manager, because there's a power dynamic, you have to show that you're willing to do this work too. Radical candor isn't something that just applies to everyone else, but not you. So you need to invite the criticism and reward and praise it. And you should also be ready, particularly if you're a manager, because one of the great comparisons I heard in leadership training that I did, actually it was called coach training a while back, was as a manager, it's like you're walking around with a gun on your hip, because you just have that power dynamic, and you have to be conscious of that. And so it's very likely that if you ask for feedback, you're not going to get it right away in the first conversation. Or if you do, it's going to be, you're great at this. It's really hard to get that candid, tough feedback. So you have to really demonstrate it, because it is also true that just saying, hey, I'm open to feedback is not enough. Like that doesn't empower people to tell you. You have to show them. So ideally you show in a kind of public environment that you're open to challenge and are willing to change your mind, you know, and that you're adaptable. You're not you don't necessarily view yourself as the person with all the answers who just can't be moved. So I guess this is, you're again modeling the behavior and showing that it's a safe thing to do. Humility is, I think, really, really key to radical candor. It's a concept that they come back to constantly, both with praise and criticism. It's, just because you are a coach or a manager does not mean you have all of the answers. You may have some, but if you're not open to the idea that you may be wrong, people see right through that. And you may think you're really clever about it, but people spot that right away. So a lot of this is just how you phrase things. Phrases where you're making it clear that you're expressing your opinion with the intention of helping, and asking questions rather than telling, here's how you should do it. Because you may have been missing context, and when the person responds, you may find that you have a very different opinion on it afterwards. So when you don't do that, I think people shut down too early in the conversation. Being timely and specific is very, very important. Feedback, whether it's praise or criticism, it has a shelf life. Ideally, you want to give feedback of both varieties, right after the meeting, if it's possible. Ideally in person. These days in person is pretty difficult, so jump on a video call or then a phone call. As much as possible, avoid email and chat. But the biggest deal is definitely make it timely and make it specific. So one good technique I've found is situation, behavior, impact. I've also heard this called kind of pebble in the pond, which is you describe the situation that you observed, and or the situation in which a behavior observed, and then you tell that person the impact that it had on maybe the team or the results. That's one, very specific. Two, it makes it not about them. It's about, maybe an undesirable behavior, or maybe like, here's this impact that you may not have known on how it affected the team. I think this gets missed a lot on the praise side. I've been guilty of, just those kind of the hollow and specific praise, like good job. Everyone loves a pat on the back, but if praise is demonstrating what success looks like and what the organization and team values, good job doesn't really communicate that. So you miss the mark, and it can actually undermine all the goodness that you can get out of the praise, which is you want to see more of that behavior. So it's just as important to remember that. I think many of these practical tips apply just as much on the praise side as they do the criticism side, even though folks spend a lot of time on the hard stuff. Do we have another comment coming in on chat?
We had a couple side comments. Let's see. Just catching up. Oh, related to kind of the power dynamics, sort of the opposite side of what you were speaking of, Kincade, that seems like the higher, this is from Neil, the higher up the chain a person is, the less they seem to listen, as they appear too busy to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, very true.
Let's see, Sherry. Although some may appear that way, you may find some gems and leaders who do listen because they are genuinely good listeners, or if the culture of the environment nurture that.
Right, definitely. Yeah, I think it's, as leaders or coaches, it's just something to constantly be cognizant of. We all like to think we, listen well and are in touch, and maybe that's true a lot of times. Sometimes it's not. So, but if you've been fortunate enough to have those, that's great.
Hey, Kincade?
Yeah.
Sure. Can you take that good job comment, praise, and put some specific candor around what would be the best path forward? So you said that good job was not really enough. So can you just add some more color to that?
Yeah, it's really mostly the point I'm trying to make is kind of that you want to be specific and timely with praise, just like you do with criticism. So using situation, behavior, impact. When you did this awesome thing, fixed that bug for the team. The impact it had in terms of our being able to save time, not troubleshooting, or the impact it had on customers. It's just, drawing it back to something that really resonates, where they know, okay, that's a behavior that, that the team values. So it's just really about taking it from fuzzy to, in this situation, you did X and it had this awesome impact on the team or the customers or the company's results.
Got it. Thank you.
Sure. Great question. Praise publicly, criticize privately. There's an exception here. If you're a manager, you don't get that luxury. You have to be willing to be praised and to be challenged publicly, because again, you're trying to create an environment where it's safe, where if you don't have a bad reaction to it, then other people will feel safe giving you feedback. But when you're giving praise, generally that's the kind of thing that can happen in public. But I do want to remind you that, again, know your audience. Some people find that exceedingly uncomfortable. So maybe it's okay to do that with a team with some person, but you wouldn't want to call them out in an all hands meeting, so just be cognizant of, not all of these are hard and fast rules, but on the criticize side, while it's fine, I think, to debate ideas publicly, if you have a person specific critique, it's best to do that privately. And again, remember, ideally in person, then video conference, phone. Almost always avoid email and chat, because those are just fraught with peril when it comes to signal acknowledgement and the chance of people misinterpreting. And then not personalizing the criticism is really, really important. That kind of falls into obnoxious aggression if you're just, if you're just calling someone names, or no one's listening past the statement you made about, what they were. Again, this is kind of goes back to the situation, behavior, impact. You're making it about the behavior. So instead of you're sloppy and careless, your presentation contained a lot of errors, and as a result, we weren't able to follow it as much. Again, direct does not mean be a jerk. This is one of the biggest things that can just shut people down. So, and then I think back to those, like we talked in the beginning about, why do we fear, or why is giving tough feedback so hard? One of the reasons that people gave is, you don't know how someone's going to react, and we all know if you've ever gotten any tough criticism, it stings, and so expecting a reaction is a good thing. Like, people are probably going to react, but you need to remember that the first reaction might not be necessarily where they ultimately end up. A day or two later, they may feel differently about it. They may come back, what you said, no one's ever raised that to me. So it's really kind of important to acknowledge that, let them have their response. The only thing you can control to an extent is your own reaction or response to how they react. But none of us can, prevent that, control it. You can maybe prepare, because it's reasonable to expect a response. So it's helpful to maybe role play the possibilities, either with your head or, in your head, or with other people. And we all are, we all want to jump to solutions. I think it's best to sometimes not, you may not want to do that in the same meeting or discussion where you present the feedback, because if that person hasn't processed through that, the solutions may not be the right ones, or they may just not be ready to jump there. So giving that some space, I think, is helpful.
A couple questions, Kincade. Sure. First one from Sherry. How would you offer feedback privately if the other person is in another country or time zone?
Right. I'll get to part of that here. Actually, I do have a slide on remote work, but in general, you know, I think we've all had to adjust to that. It's the same thing. You're probably not going to be able to give it in person, but you can still do a video call. And I would recommend in that case, try to do it in a way that, you know, or maybe you're going out of your comfort zone a little bit and working in their time zone. So being willing to, you know, set up that meeting or that discussion like a little earlier or later than you normally would work. Was there another question?
Yeah, we got one more from Carrie.
Sure.
What's your thought on giving tough reaction Friday, 4 p.m.?
That's a really good question. I think that probably may be a cop-out answer. In general, I would say that might not be the best thing to leave someone with over the weekend, unless you know them pretty well and there's a fair amount of trust that's been established. Because if you care personally about them, you also don't necessarily want to ruin their weekend. Or like not have time for them to follow up. So, you know, because maybe they want to talk about it later. I would say if you do, you know, be available to them. Being available is, you know, an important part of being a coach or a manager. But I would probably, I guess, as a general rule, try to avoid the 4 p.m. on a Friday, unless I just really knew somebody, you know, really well. So. Yeah,
Janet added a follow-up thought. If the problem happens at 3:30 p.m. on a Friday, don't leave it until Monday.
That is a very, very good point. So yeah, here again, it's the nuance. It's the details where this can be hard stuff and where it's just kind of a constant process. These are great questions, by the way. Is that another one I see?
Yeah, some extra commentary. I don't want to miss Neil's. As a leader manager, the only time I can think of challenging someone in public would be to make sure the people in the room don't walk away with the wrong impression / incorrect information. Hard to do when it is your boss you're trying to correct.
Right. Yeah. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to add that other comment that Nathan added, which was, you also want to recognize your own choices and behavior as part of the situation and as a key partner in the solution. Right, absolutely. If you react versus respond, like if let's say someone has a bad reaction to your feedback, maybe they got defensive, and then you respond with anger, you may never get the chance to have that conversation again. So it's you should probably do what you can to try to prep for, there's a possibility this person gets defensive or whatever the case may be. Yeah, thanks, Kincade.
Yeah, and I will save some time here at the end. I'm actually almost done here for more questions too, but happy to answer them as we go. Just want to let y'all know. I don't think I set that up at the beginning. Yeah. This one is something that I feel like maybe the most common thing I've said as a leader or coach throughout the years is, you know, someone comes up to me, so-and-so is being a jerk to me. And I ask some version of the question, well, you know, what have you done to communicate that feedback directly to them? And I would probably add, and is there a way you can put it that doesn't involve calling them a jerk? Can you, you know, so the point is you're wanting, ideally, this is so true if you're a manager. If you find out for the first time about a bit of like maybe some undesirable behavior you're doing, you find out from your manager for the first time, you're gonna know that it came from someone on the team, and there's nothing that feels worse than that. That just feels like an ambush, particularly if you consider that, again, managers have, you know, right, wrong, or indifferent. There's the power dynamic there. They have the power to hire and fire, and so it is the compassionate, kind, radically candid thing to do for people to give that feedback directly. Now, this whole presentation is about how hard that is, and so, but that doesn't, you know, it's still the right thing to do, I think, as a coach, to try to encourage feedback to happen directly rather than always be proxied through a coach or a manager. So, you know, questions like, are you giving John this feedback directly? Or what have you tried so far, so that you can kind of talk through it. There are cases I do, you know, want to note that there are cases where that might just not work, and you may need to offer to mediate or bring in a mediator. Just be sure that you don't offer to mediate before you've kind of tried to get an understanding of both perspectives, because, you know, you only have half the story at that point. So, and but really, if you indulge people talking behind each other's backs, you know, that's going to step all over the trust that you're trying to build. And this is, yeah, I've kind of touched on this a little bit through other slides, but it's really important to, I think where we miss on preparing is, if I think back on all the conversations that I've, you know, rehearsed and all of that, most of them fall into the like tough feedback type thing. Those are the ones you know, you're up all night the night before. How am I going to present this in a way that you know, they'll take it in the spirit in which I intend it? But it's really important to do that with praise too, and we overlook that a lot, because again, like, if you're not specific with that praise, you may have missed that, you know, acknowledging somebody else, and that, you know, where you may just provide it in an offhand way that's so inspecific that you undermine what you were trying to accomplish, or, you know, kind of water down the good feeling that people get from it, or the behavior you're trying to have them model. So, you know, this just helps to just imagine the different scenarios. You know, say it out loud to yourself in the mirror, or if you have a trusted other coach or somebody else, ideally maybe someone who's, you know, not on the team with them, but who's worked with them before. There's maybe some cases where you could, hey, you know, so-and-so, how might this land? You know, I would say be very, very careful about, you know, make sure there's a good foundation and that other person cares there. But, you know, it's just helpful to kind of role play it either by yourself or with a trusted colleague. So, and then another way to walk the walk is just check in with people afterwards and make sure that they know that, you know, they can give you feedback on how you presented something. You know, how'd I do? How could I put that differently, you know, the next time? Again, it's just reinforcing a tone of candor, and that you too you're open to, you know, feedback and challenge. Remote work, you know, we're all adjusting to that. I think we've all probably gone from, we had a few members on the team that work remotely, or maybe we worked with offshore teams. It's, you know, but one of the things that we definitely miss from kind of this open office environments is you just miss the hallway conversations and, like, you know, the learnings you get and opportunities to, like, just get to know people. And so just a few ways you can overcome that. Shorter, more frequent video calls are helpful. You know, check in with the person for 5 or 10 minutes daily or every other day, you know, if they're comfortable with that, obviously. But it's probably not a replacement for those hallway conversations, and but it's something that, you know, that you can do to kind of adjust to this, you know, how we're all having to work now. I've seen some teams use they'll just leave like a Slack or Zoom team room open all day as they work, so that they're still chatting. That's not just chatting in Slack. When I say use Slack, I mean they're using like the video conferencing stuff that's built into Slack. So yeah, known some teams that'll just leave that up all day long. And is it the same as like sharing an open office with someone? No, but it's probably the next best thing. I used to take walks for one-on-ones, virtual walks. Those work, you know. I don't know. I do some of my I have some of my better conversations when I'm kind of moving, and other people are too. So yeah, you also get to see kind of where they are. So, and then this is we probably all had someone like where there's another team or like one person on the team who works, you know, maybe they're on the West Coast and we're all Central time. It's helpful just to be, you know, kind of show empathy. If you can occasionally try to put yourself in that other time zone, like work a day where maybe you come in a little early or later to, you know, do some calls with them so that they're not always the one who's on really early or having to meet with you at 9 o'clock. This is not something you have to do all the time, but being willing to do that, just it shows you care, and you know, it also lets you kind of step into their shoes for a minute and see what that might be like. And then I would say the beauty of this framework is that it is really simple, and so you know, having this up in like a, you know, accessible to people. I guess it's kind of hard these days to like post it in a team space since all of our team spaces are our living room or our home office. But, you know, the more people have a shared understanding of it, it's really easy. You can start having conversations about, well, you might have been shooting for radical candor there, but I think you're actually living over an obnoxious aggression with the way, you know, you presented that to someone. It just becomes this easy way of talking about how feedback is presented. In the same way that like, you know, Eisenhower's matrix around, you know, urgent, not urgent, important, not important can be really simple for prioritization. That's just these easy categories people can put into and get a shared understanding. A book club on this book would be great because there is so much nuance. It'd be great if you can have like, you know, everyone's read the book and you've had some discussions around it so that, you know, people didn't just skim it and walk away with, cool, we're going to be radically candid now, and I can just come in and say whatever I want. So it just helps to be overt about, you know, having this as a framework that you're all using. Just be careful that, you know, you're going to introduce this, you're going to be conscious of like company culture and, you know, being transparent about it and things like that. Not everyone's quite ready for this, so this might be a process of getting to that. That's it's really like my slides. I did want to end with, I'm going to tell a brief version of a story that happened to me recently where, yeah, so I've been either coaching or managing for, you know, at least half my life. And this is still a process for me. So this story is actually from 2 weeks ago. Ironically, as I'm preparing to give a workshop about radical candor, I actually, after a couple of days of outpatient treatment, I ended up in the hospital with a pretty bad infection in my left elbow that just wasn't responding to antibiotics. And so I went to the ER for IV antibiotics. And without going into the boring details, the experience was, you know, I figured out, first of all, that there are a lot of doctors and nurses who didn't work there normally because of COVID. This was a non-COVID admitting hospital, but, you know, people are moving around. And so, you know, the communication to me left me, there were just bad handoffs between shifts. You know, the medical profession is not unlike software in that there's like all these cross-functional groups that have to work together. You have medical and non-medical staff that have to work together. You have specialists, doctors, nurses, care assistants. And at the end of the day, I just found myself constantly kind of getting conflicting information and confused about, you know, am I supposed to be fasting or can I eat breakfast? Am I going to have a surgery or am I not going to have a surgery? I'm going to be in here one day. Oh no, I'm going to be in here 4 days. And I spent the better part of about 2.5 out of 3 days completely over in Ruinous Empathy. You know, I didn't know these people for one, and I was, you know, sensitive to the fact that some of them are working in a new area, like a totally new hospital with new processes. But finally, where I actually got to radical candor was like the last day. I'd been told that morning, you're going to be leaving later today. So I'm feeling pretty jazzed. And 15 minutes later, a specialist who's not seen my arm at all walks in and tells me, it looks like I'm going to be here probably a couple more days. And so I was deflated. I had a new nurse that came in, and I basically just told her the longer version. I gave her more specific examples that I won't bore you all with of how I'd kind of just been getting conflicting information. and I probably over-explained it. The response was just it was just such a good reminder for me. Her response, I was terrified of, said, first, you're apologizing and caveating too much. I think what I hear you saying, though, is we just need to get on the same page, right? This just was a turning point for the whole thing. I did end up going home that day, and for the remainder of that trip, it was just really, really clear what was going to happen. And they were, they did exactly what I asked, and they did more, actually. I mean, a supervisor from the hospital came by to quiz me on how they could have done better. So it's just, it's a good example of this is hard, but it pays dividends. And no matter how long you've been doing this, it's really easy to live over in Ruinous Empathy. It's really easy to do that with people you don't know. But what an awesome experience, when you do it and it works, because I think they wanted to help, just like all of us want to improve. If they don't know how I'm feeling, they had no opportunity to help. And so with that, I'll turn it over to any other questions the group may have.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kincade. Quick time check. We have just under 10 minutes for Q&A, so we'll probably only be able to answer maybe 3 questions. Cool. Sherry did have a question that I intentionally skipped over so you could get through the last few slides there. And it is, no, you're good. The question is, what do you think makes a good mediator? I think that was on one of the previous slides you referenced, potentially stepping in as a mediator.
I would actually say, sometimes it might not be the manager because of that power dynamic. So this is very situation dependent. In an extreme case, it could be HR. In other extreme cases, it might be worth bringing in a third party mediator. But you want to look for someone who, I guess is they don't have to necessarily be formally trained in it, but at least they're going to go through the process of trying to understand both sides, listening to both sides, someone who's, as much as possible cognizant of their own biases. And, actually, to be quite honest, sometimes the best mediators I've seen are Scrum Masters and Agile coaches. And if there's one thing I've learned, I've kind of been a Scrum Master and Agile coach, and I've been a manager on, in a few departments. There's the best places I've worked is when there's a really strong partnership between the coaches and managers. And so that's been probably my go-to. Now, obviously, if that coach is comfortable with it, that's hard work. So, but they're also, the other reason that's true is the coaches and Scrum Masters often are much closer to the team than a manager is. That's just the way things are, and the way we develop software in most places these days. So that's probably the safer way to go about it, at least initially. Going to the HR route is definitely, that's an extreme case. You need to be cognizant of that has implications. And so, there are cases where you just need to do that, obviously, for legal reasons. But, I don't want everyone to rush to involve everybody HR right off the bat without thinking about what the implications are. Sorry, long-winded answer.
All good. Thank you for that. Thanks for the question, Sherry. Question from Liz. Do you have any thoughts about this construct within the Black Lives Matter movement?
About this construct within the Black Lives Matter movement?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's about how to be radically candid in the context of BLM.
Yeah. Is that on point, Liz? Would you add any color to that? You're muted if you're trying to talk.
Sorry, it took me forever to find the right button. I think a lot of this has got me thinking about what does it look like in terms of kind of cultural differences and expectations.
Yeah. So I guess I'll start with the book does spend some time on this, and as does the blog, on just, there are gender and race implications and like these unconscious biases that we all need to be aware of as coaches and leaders. And so I'll start there. You need to examine your own biases and blind spots. I guess maybe I'm inserting my own opinions here a little bit, but I certainly think that where I've used that is being radically candid with some people about where they've maybe had some blind spots and not understanding, the struggle that's represented there. Apologize that this kind of, obviously this gets into politics a bit, but I certainly think that when I've done that, my intent was to help. I can't tell you that the response every time I did that was necessarily right. In fact, I gave someone that used to work with me and some pretty candid feedback along those lines of some biases he had, and he's not spoken to me since. And so, but I don't necessarily regret doing that. I'm not sure if this totally answers your question. I do think that this framework, though, if you're kind of asking how would I challenge somebody in my circle, I think this framework could certainly help you. I know I use that in some of the conversations I've had with, family and other people. Did that answer your question, Liz?
Yeah, I mean, it's just got a whole train of thought going in my head. So I think lots to explore, but thank you. Yeah, appreciate the insights.
A great question. And I guess I want to add too, like that, I don't know, I think those conversations are valuable, and I just want to open them up to, there's probably a lot of questions out of this. And so I urge people to reach out to me to talk further on some of this stuff too. But that's a really good one.
Awesome. Thanks, Liz.
So, yeah.
I don't think we have any more questions, just some other notes on mediators. Erin threw in there, mediators should be cognizant of their biases, what biases are in place. They also need to be able to articulate what they hear, to bottom line, to ask powerful questions. Good mediators are good coaches and vice versa.
Right.
Totally agreed.
Definitely. Just to follow up with Liz's question, and just this is good advice I think for the whole group. If you're interested in this stuff, these aren't my ideas. There's the book. Obviously, I really encourage everybody to read the book. There's a blog with just tons and tons of articles where they get into some specifics like that. And there are some specific articles around gender bias, race bias, things like that. And so I encourage you to kind of dig into those. There's a podcast. I'm pretty sure there's an episode on that very thing. And so thought I'd just throw that back out there. There's a lot of content out there for those of you who have like follow-up questions. I'd love to talk with any of you about it too.
Awesome. Should people reach out via LinkedIn? Do you have a preferred method to connect?
Yeah, I can tell you what, we're going to send out the presentation, right?
We can make it available, but we're going to make it available up on YouTube so people can come back and watch this. So could we just connect with you on LinkedIn? Would that be easy?
Just connect with me on LinkedIn. It's, you'll find me under Kincade Park. I was going to say, I'll post it in I'll put it, make sure I add it to these slides. And I'm sure we can put it on the Meetup page too.
Sure, we can make that done.
And usually that, I also will probably share with, once we start the conversation.
Yeah.
Probably willing to share email and phone number and things like that after we've had an initial chat. So.
Yeah.
Perfect. Awesome.
So,
yeah, go ahead, Erin.
I was just going to thank you. And everyone, I want to say that Kincade really does live this. He practices this. I know from personal experience, he doesn't just pay lip service to these ideals. He really goes out of his way to practice what he preaches. And that's not commonly found in managers and leaders. And so I wanted to thank him for exhibiting that. It's heartening to see. So, yeah. Kincade, I know you're blushing over there, but you'll just have to suffer. Okay. Any last minute things before we wrap up for the night?
No, thank you so much, Kincade.
Thank you
All
all.
right, so everyone reach, oh, I'm sorry, Kincade, I spoke over you.
Oh, no, I just wanted to thank everybody for coming and yeah, helping out. So good, definitely a topic I could riff on for longer than an hour and a half. I appreciate your time though.
Yeah. So everyone reach out. You can connect with Kincade on LinkedIn. You can also find Brittany and myself there. And we'd love to see you back at future coaching SIGs. I mean, honestly, I have people lined up to about February already of 2021. So we're doing really well in that regard. But if there are things that you're interested in hearing speakers about, please reach out to me. And I'm happy to try to find someone that can address that particular topic, because we want these to be useful. We want this to be a place where people can come and find some answers for some things that are bothering them. But that being said, we will have Rob Brodell talking to us next month about product management, agile coaching, and the blind spots. And so we'll be here just after Labor Day. So yeah, don't worry, you guys, I'll be mindful of when Labor Day is here in the US. But that being said, I think we're good, and we will let everybody go off and have dinner tonight. So thanks all, I appreciate it.
Thanks everyone.
Bye everyone.
Bye.